All right, so welcome everybody to the IT Documentation and Users Group monthly webinar. We can continue to try to find something interesting related to documentation and process to bring to you each month. After 3 years, it's we keep looking for like new. What can we discuss that we haven't discussed before? Even though some repetition probably isn't bad. And Brooke's like, I've been working with clients constantly discussing, how do we bring people back into the fold of the office, or should we, or why are we paying rent? And so Brooks had a lot of experience having those conversations with clients. So we thought we would talk about that today. I will let Brooke advance us and we'll do the quick introductions about ITDUG and our topic today. So ITDUG was founded by Tracy Harden of Next Century Technologies. She's out of Kentucky. She founded this group in May of 2018 to co-learn IT Glue together. She got me involved in August as a co-administrator, and we decided to open it up to all platforms besides just one specific product. And you can see our amazing growth. 18 months later, we had 1,000, and then 9 months later, we had 2,000, and we've continued that trajectory. So please feel free to keep inviting. That's the more people who can respond to your questions on the Facebook forum. I'm Alan, founder of Eureka Process, and Brooks, the vice president who will be speaking today. You can see my history on this next click here. I've been doing IT since '94, owned an MSP, sold an MSP, led some others with some great success before founding this company. I met Brooke during my tenure at one of those MSP spaces. And she is currently doing a lot of project management and screening of candidates for our clients, as well as consulting them on projects and process, which is how she gets to experience all these things to do with working from home. Eureka Process in general, we do work with clients all day and every day regarding their strategy, their processes, their screening and retention, as well as run a community site called theeurekacommunity.com. Just to give you a feel for where we're coming from when we give you this information. So here we are, we're starting to roll out of the pandemic. Brooke, what do you want to know?
So now that we're post-pandemic, or maybe not, depending on how you read the news these days, before the pandemic, we had a way that we were going to work. Then the pandemic hit and everybody kind of had to make a shift, both within the MSPs and your particular employees, and also for our clients. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a poll. So I kind of want to know from everybody, how's your workspace going right now? Are you fully in the office? Are you still fully remote? Are you trying to do some sort of combo hybrid thing? People working in the office a couple of days a week, maybe from home a couple of days a week? Adam, you're helping a couple of different clients. What are you seeing with the clients that you're working with?
Depending on client need, sometimes there's deployments and things that absolutely have to happen on site. But other than that, there are a lot of staff that are maybe in a combination of remote and on site. I think there's with our industry, like in the IT, there is a need for people to be on site and going to client sites and things from time to time. But there's also that maybe administrative side, or just checking in here and there. But I've seen a lot more people working from remote, which I think in the IT industry, we're always prepared for as an option. So I don't think that we felt it as much as other industries.
I agree.
But I kind of like the trend.
Yep, so it looks like most of the people here are doing the fully remote work from home. So we kind of have some different options. There's the full remote. We had some clients that I work with that already worked with that model prior to the pandemic. We had some people that were fully in office, and then depending on how lockdowns went in their particular state, they had to send everybody home for a certain period of time. Then we had some people that did this before. They had a hybrid. You could work in the office part of the week, maybe at home. Maybe it depended on what type of work that you had. What I've told a lot of people is some of this is going to depend on your clientele and your market that you're in. If all of your clients are local and you've always serviced them with a person on site, maybe you have a monthly recurring where you're going to go on site and visit everybody, and that client is fully back in the office, then some of these things may have to be adjusted for that. So you may need to think about that when we're deciding whether we're going to come back in the office. Are we going to stay home? Are we going to have a hybrid environment? So there's a lot of different factors that we need to think about. No matter what you choose, we need to have some policies in place. We've got to have a work from home policy. Even if you're doing a hybrid environment, when people are home, we need to have a policy that explains to them clearly what it is that we're going to ask them to do and be accountable for. So we've got to have some process and policy around that. We also need to have some KPIs or metrics. What are we going to measure these employees by? Is it going to be utilization? Is it going to be tickets? Again, lots of different options. We just want to make sure that we have these policies in place. And then we have what we call the forgotten metric. We'll get to that one in a minute. Expectations. Whatever we decide, whether it's leadership plus a couple others, we need to set the expectation with everybody. We want to set everybody up to be successful. If everybody's going to work from home, how can we best make our employees be successful? What can we do to make sure that they're productive and that we can keep the train moving down the track? It needs to be documented. Whatever we choose to do, we have to document it. It's got to be in a place where everybody can go look at it. And the big one is it's got to be delivered to everybody. Everybody has to understand what your process or policy is. Our work from home policy is X. Okay, we need to have a meeting. We need to explain to everybody. You need to let people be able to ask questions if something is not clear. We want to deliver this in the best possible format. Also, if you're going to have a hybrid environment, how are we going to work that out? Does it need prior approval? We want to make sure that everybody understands what the process and policy is so that everybody can follow it. Alan, you look like you had something to add?
Always.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any example of various expectations?
We're getting to that.
Okay.
I think we have some more slides. We just kind of wanted to give a 30,000 foot overview before we dove into the next pieces.
I'm waiting with bated breath.
I bet you are. All right, work from home policy. A couple different things we want to make sure that we have in there. Do you need your manager's approval to do so? Another example is to work remotely. We need to have an effective work area. You may want to very specifically define that in your work from home policy. Does the person need to have a room that no one else is in the room? Does it need to have a door? Does it need to have nothing on the walls? Are they going to be doing Zoom meetings maybe with clients throughout the day? So you may want to be very specific in defining that space that they're going to be working from. Another thing, we want to make sure expectations are set with the employees that you need to be ready to go, sitting on go before your shift starts. Even though I work from home, if I have a meeting at 8 o'clock, I can't log in at 8 o'clock and think that I'm going to get the ball rolling. I need to be there just the same as if I went into the office. I'm not going to roll in at 8 o'clock for an 8 o'clock meeting. I'm going to get there at 1:45, get my coffee, make sure I'm all set up, get my computer fired up, make sure everything's good to go. No lovely Microsoft updates fired off the night before and I have to do something funky. So you want to make sure that that's there. Another key expectation is visibility. Alan and I dealt with this specifically when we were at our last MSP together. We had an employee that ended up moving and that person was going to work remotely, still work for the company, but work somewhere else. This was several years ago. This was the only person that worked remotely.
About a decade ago, so ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, like way out there. But one of the expectations, and Alan was this person's manager at that point, the expectation was it is on you to be very visible during the day. You have to be noisy, for lack of a better word, so that people know that you're there. You're responding to questions in whatever internal messaging app you're using, Teams, Slack, whatever, and make sure that when people are reaching out for assistance that you are right then and they're available to be able to answer those questions. When I leave for lunch, I send a message, hey, I'm stepping off my desk for lunch. I'll be back in 30 minutes, whatever it is, so that everybody knows what's happening because they can't see me when I'm at home. So, they can't see that Brooke left the office to go get lunch and she'll be back. So it's making sure that the people that are working remotely understand that that expectation is on them. It's their responsibility. Alan, do you want to weigh in on that? Because like I said, we did this way back in the day with that particular person.
Well, yeah, and you used the word that I like, which is noisy. It was the easiest way to explain to folks. You've got to be noisier when you're away from the office. I can't see you. If you enjoy this privilege, then show it. Show us how much more productive you are. If you're 95% productive at the office and you like working from home, I'd like you to be 96% productive from home. Show us that it's going to happen and it's going to work, and that's part of the being noisy. Checking in and out for breaks, saying hi. If you have a random Slack channel or Teams channel, actually participating in that from time to time to just show you're engaged.
I have a client that I work with that uses Slack exclusively for internal messaging. And one of the responsibilities for people working from home is they're required to check in the Slack channel in the morning. It's the same as me coming into the office and just saying good morning to everybody when I come in the door. It's just like, hey, how's everybody doing? So same concept within a messaging app. No matter which one you choose, just let everybody know that I'm there, ready to work if anybody needs me. Again, when I step out, let people know, hey, I'm taking a break. I'll be back in 20 minutes, taking a lunch, see you guys in a little bit, just so that people know that you're there and know that you're available.
Does a yellow sports coat count as being noisy?
It can.
Absolutely.
The second expectation that we need to set is ISP and power issues. This is something that is on the employee. The employer may decide to give some sort of a stipend for internet. The employer may require the employee to have separate internet from their home internet. Again, whatever you decide, we need to make sure that it's documented and it's understood and accepted by all. Also, same thing with power. It's on me. If I have meetings and something happens, I live in Savannah, Georgia, so in the summertime we get tons of storms. Yesterday I had one right before I had to do an interview. So prior to that interview, I printed out the resume that I needed. I printed out my questionnaire. I had Zoom ready to go on my phone. So worst case scenario, I would still be able to press on and do that interview. If your internet is going to be down for an extended period of time, you will need to find a remote location to work from. Again, these are expectations that need to be documented and delivered to your employees. Repeated issues with that, then the employer is going to have something in the work from home policy that says we'll need to reevaluate your ability to be able to work from home. So if you're having an ISP or a power outage once a week, you probably need to come work in the office for most of the time, because we can't have people just randomly not being able to support the clients, handle the phone queues, whatever the case may be. It's the same as if somebody just got sick and left and went home. So we want to make sure that we are predictable and we're able to support our clients, and I'm able to help my team. So if I can't do that on a regular, reliable basis, then that person may need to come back into the office.
So my assumption is, I mean, this come back to the office would obviously be some sort of hybrid model. But if you're fully remote, then when you talk about ISP and power issues, I guess this comes down to a simple discipline issue. Your requirements are to make these things happen.
If you're not in if you are in the same town as the employer, if we're all in Savannah working together and I'm working from home and I keep having problems, Alan as my supervisor is going to say, hey, Brooke, you're going to have to come back to the office. This is just not working out. We need to come up with another game plan. If all of your employees are remote and they're scattered across the United States, at that point, we would recommend that you start the coaching plan. Where you're just sort of having a conversation. Again, is it repeated behavior? What can we do to help you? Do you need to get a better ISP service? Do you need to switch? We always want to take the positive outlook and what can we do to help this employee make sure that they have everything that they need to be able to successfully work from home. So you want to take the positive approach and do what you can to help. But then, like I said, if we keep having issues over and over again, then it's going to need to turn into a disciplinary issue at some point.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question? Sorry.
It does.
Okay. Michael,
It should also be part of the company's business continuity plan. Whether the company installs firewalls with cellular backup or issues laptops or whatever, they really need to back that into their business continuity plan.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. There's the whole risk reward factor. If you have 20 employees working remotely and one of them goes down, is it worth the cost times 20 to have a backup internet for everybody? Or is the risk better to have 1/20 of the company not working? You got to do your math on which one makes the most sense.
Completely agree.
And sometimes, cell phone hotspots good enough for a few hours. Sometimes.
One of the other things that we need to talk about for work from home is productivity. We're going to go into these a little bit more in depth, but what is it that we need to make sure that we're measuring to make sure the person's productive? Is it utilization? Is it ticket resolution? Is it resolution time on tickets, response time? Again, whatever we choose, we just got to make sure that it's documented and it's been delivered to everybody. So one of the things we want to have is KPIs, metrics, numbers. Utilization is a big one. We measure that across the board, and what we recommend to all of the clients that we have at Eureka Process. This is the difference of how long you were at work today minus how many hours you worked on tickets. And then it's just a math and it's a percentage. It's nothing, there's nothing gray fuzzy about it. It's a black and white math formula. If you were asking your employees to be 72% utilized when they were in the office, then Alan's going to ask for 73. For remote employees, again, should not be any different expectation. Whatever the utilization percentage is, everybody needs to understand it. They need to know how it works. How do we get that number? Making sure all of our time is documented on tickets, and then it's simple math. And then this is something that we're going to talk about with our employees. Should have already been happening before we came to the hybrid, or maybe this all of a sudden we're working from home. Should have already had it in place. But regardless, it's something that we're going to need to do now, because you're not going to be able to sit at your desk with people that are remote and know if the person's sitting there working. Can't see them. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's just so many important things here that maybe go without saying, but I'll say them anyways. I mean, KPIs are just, as she said, one other form of setting expectations. These should really be in place even without remote workforce or remote considerations. But if you don't, now you have to do it. How else are you going to find out? If you have technicians having trouble with real-time ticketing, okay, if you're making a transition, if you happen to be making a transition to long-term work from home, all right, real-time ticketing, you have to put in your time as you're working the ticket. How else can I see what you're doing? Would you rather have to report separately what you're doing, or me check in with you every 5 minutes, or just put it in the ticket, which you have to do anyways? So that helps make sense. And specifically to utilization, there are all sorts of complex formulas I've seen to calculate it. And that is up to you, as long as it's easy to report via Bright Gauge, a report, an Excel spreadsheet, whatever your utilization metric is. But it can be just as simple as Brooke said.
And if yours is more complex, perfectly fine, but you need to be able to explain it to your employees. There's nothing worse than me being held accountable for a number that I don't understand how you got that number. So if it's a lot of spreadsheets, if it's a lot of pivot tables, if it's a lot of whatever, you need to be able to have a method to explain it to your employees so that I know where you're getting that number from. If you're asking me to be accountable for something, I need to understand where that number comes from so that I can make sure I'm delivering. Another one that we use a lot at different places is a ticket resolution count. How many tickets are we expecting you to solve today? This is much more common on a help desk or a tier 1 or a live answer type situation. Again, the same principle is going to apply. If I'm asking you to solve 12 tickets a day, if you're on the help desk, I still need you to solve 12 tickets a day when you're at the house. Again, just trying to throw out some different KPIs so you can think about things different way. Everything's not tied to utilization. So there's lots of different ways to slice and dice how we want to measure productivity for our employees. Another one is phone call support. Again, much more applicable to a live answer help desk type or somebody that's on the phones. This one is if I get 100 calls a week and I got 5 people on that team, everybody should be answering about 20% of the calls. It's not going to be the same every single week, but if you have one person that's answering a ton of calls and one person that's only answering 9% of the phone calls, you're going to need to have a conversation, because we want to make sure that everybody's kind of pulling their weight, doing their fair share. So if we're going to have a live answer and people are answering the phones, this is another type of a metric that you can measure. Yes, sir.
I think of KPIs as a 3 to 4-legged stool. Any one KPI is probably not sufficient to tell the whole story, because you can, do greater utilization, but fail to answer a single call while you're on help desk. So that's why I usually find the 3 to 4, and also watch out for the opposite. As a manager or an owner, you're probably going to look at a lot of numbers, and that's fine. It's great to have metrics to help tell you the story or to help manage your team, but it should just be 3 to 4, where you're measuring their performance every day and holding them accountable to that, versus a troubleshooting tool or way to find problems.
Agreed. All right, the forgotten metric, one of my favorites, ESAT, employee satisfaction. This is a metric, a KPI, whatever you want to call it, but you need to know how happy your employees are, because numbers are going to tell you. I read an article today that it's more than 65% we're having an issue with retention rate. That seems to be the overriding concern with HR teams, small businesses, is okay, great, we got the employees, how are we going to keep them? So the same thing applies when you have people that are in office. Maybe you have some that are remote, maybe you have some that are hybrid, maybe you have a combination of all of these employees. And I have a couple of clients that do that. So we have a big smattering of people that we've got to figure out how are we going to make sure that everybody's happy. There's a couple of different ways to make sure that we're taking care of that. The number one thing we recommend is employee check-ins. This is where you are having maybe a service manager or an operations manager, depending on the layout of your company and how your accountability chart looks, having regular check-ins with your employees. These can be monthly, bi-weekly. Again, it's however you want to slice and dice it, but it needs to be regular, it needs to be recurring, and you need to not skip it. The check-ins are important for a couple of different reasons. You want to make sure that the metrics are being hit, the person's being accountable for their job, they're being productive, they're doing what they need to do to be part of the team. Another important piece of this is you need to check in on the employee. When Alan and I teach check-ins, the first part of the check-in for me is all about me checking on the employee and telling them, you're giving me feedback as well. I always do the metrics at the end, because I need to know, how are you doing? How's work going? How are you working from home? How is the transition? How are, the family life, if people have to come up with childcare, asking those questions, because I care about them as an employee. They're not just a number on the metric. Yes, that's part of the things that I need to use to make sure that they're accountable for their role, but I'm concerned about them as an employee. We had a client that, due to the lockdown for the state that they were in, everybody had to go home and work remotely. This particular company, this MSP, they had a lot of single people who were then at home by themselves all the time. And we saw a spike in people that appeared to, I'm not going to say fully depressed, but they were not very vocal anymore in the chats. When you talk to them, they just didn't seem to have that same energy. So working remotely and being isolated was an issue for them. And by having those check-ins, we were able to recognize that pretty early. A couple of them, we recommended them to go into some counseling. And then as soon as it opened back up, where we could bring maybe a couple of people back in the office based on the space and social distancing, those people were now at the top of our list to get them back into the office so that they had that atmosphere, so they weren't isolated at home. But the only reason that we knew that is because we were doing the check-ins and actually checking on the employees to make sure that they were doing okay.
Maybe this is an important corollary. Maybe the manager has to be noisy too for the remote workers. I don't mean like nitpicking, nagging, but just like, hey, how you doing? Checking in. I haven't been. Do you need anything?
And I recommend to do, yes, I message people in Slack and Teams and whatever, but I do a ton of video calls. I want people to see my face and me to see their face and ask how they're doing and, have that sort of interaction, even if it's virtual, so that you're not feeling isolated by yourself. So I completely agree. It's definitely on the service manager, service coordinator, operations person, to make sure that you are also checking in on people and being noisy, and you just don't leave them kind of out there on an island by themselves.
Every now and then I will go a whole day of back-to-back meetings and be like, man, I haven't seen Adam, Brooke, or Veronica in a day or two. And I have to stop myself and go reach like, hey, how's it going? By the way, I have an opening at X time. Would love to chat, just to make that connection during the week.
And at Eureka Process, we have a couple of meetings on Friday that are internal. One of them is we work on internal processes, but a lot of times that's just where the four of us, maybe we haven't seen or talked to each other all week except in Teams. So it's, maybe the first 15 or 20 minutes, we're just kind of, hey, how's it going? Haven't seen you in a couple of days. How's your week? What are you doing this weekend? Just to try to make that connection and still feel like you have that office camaraderie that sometimes gets lost when you go into that remote environment.
I was actually recommending to a client today that, you have a lot of great structured meetings. They follow our process. They're doing well. Maybe you need an hour a week of unstructured meeting. Like, just get together and say hi and what's going on. What are you thinking? It can be business related. That's fine. But give it a chance to go off the rails as well. Obviously, we're a bit highly processed here, so I have a tendency to be a little too on the rails.
Another way that we can work on employee satisfaction is virtual team building. I am going to let Veronica and Adam and Alan weigh in on this one because they did a virtual team building event with the little Oculus Quest things. So do you guys want to talk about that? And I know whatever the Oculus Quest thing, but still, you can talk about it and kind of how it went and what y'all did and if it was something that we might recommend to other people.
So when you said virtual team meeting, you meant virtual reality team building.
Oh my gosh, semantics. Dude, you know what I'm talking about. It's the goggles things that y'all are wearing. Just talk about it.
Yeah, we looked into virtual reality as a method for getting together and collaborating. I think the results were maybe we're not quite ready for that, for what we want to achieve, but I think we had a blast trying to figure it out together. It was almost more like having a 3D puzzle party. Veronica, what were your thoughts?
It was a lot of fun. I've never met Adam in person, but I had the feeling that I was, sitting right next to him, which was very surreal and strange. But it was a lot of fun. And we even have pictures together, and it's weird and funny. I liked it a lot. It was fun.
Yeah, just
Yes, sir.
looking at a couple of the apps we played with, some were really good at working in virtual reality, but not collaborating. And others had this, a type of collaboration that we weren't accustomed to. I think what I was looking for was a really cool shared whiteboard, which we did not quite achieve. But it was nice. Adam would sneak up behind me and I would hear his voice coming from back here. I'm like, whoa, how are you doing over there?
That is so creepy.
I do think the whiteboard is better in Teams, and we use it pretty often to just draw things. But in VR, it was cool to have a different kind of setting, like Veronica was saying, and we were near each other, and it felt like we were working in a room because we were in a design space, which was pretty cool. But like also other things that we do are it could be virtual team building events where it's somebody's work anniversary, which was Veronica's recently, her work anniversary. And then we have done happy hours in the past. It's just a good time to hang out and enjoy each other's company and talk. It's been fun.
So when Veronica and Adam and I decided to do this, I decided to go Google and see what is everybody else doing for these events. One that was my favorite was You're on Mute, Work from Home Bingo. I thought this was hilarious. So everybody gets this bingo card at the beginning of the week. And when you hear these things during meetings during the week, then you cover up the bingo card. And then I'm thinking we're going to give somebody a gift card or something like that. Because these phrases may not have been that common a year and a half ago, but now they are. And Veronica and I were going over this before this meeting and we were just dying laughing. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, wait, I have a hard stop, because that's what Alan says all the time. I got a hard stop at 2:00 because he always has some meeting to go to. So it's just kind of funny, the terminology. Another one that I found was a virtual teams. Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about. Another one is a virtual team scavenger hunt. This is maybe where you're asking people to find things online. Again, just another way to kind of jazz things up. A lot of this is going to depend on and your employees and what they're going to think is fun and not fun. Some people are going to go kicking and screaming and not want to do it. But if you throw some prizes behind it, you might be able to get people involved, and then they might realize that it might be fun. And then we did the virtual reality one, test drove that. That was pretty cool. Another one is the sort of virtual happy hour after work. Maybe you get everybody on a Zoom. I have a client that does virtual game nights. There's an app that they use, and they'll go do, I think they played Clue last month, like the board game, but it's available virtually. So everybody was able to join in, and they had a big game of Clue with the company. So there's lots of different ways to do it. So be creative. It's nobody's going to die if we play mute, work from home bingo. And you might be able to find some people that are going to think that it's fun. And again, just to let people know that you're trying to think outside of the box, and you're trying to come up with different ways to make them be engaged with their other employees that may not be in the building with them.
Virtual team scavenger. Okay, team, let's go and look in our ticketing system to see if your time is from the last ticket's there. If you find it, you win.
Just stop. That's not how this works. Okie doke. So who has questions, who has feedback, who has comments? This is a free for all. You can ask anything and everything, and we're pretty much an open book here at Eureka Process, and we will share any of our experiences or advice if somebody has questions. Do we have anything on any of the groups, Veronica, that anybody submitted any questions?
So far, no.
Okay. Michael, you got anything for us today? Any questions?
I don't think any questions. I found it very helpful, especially with some of the virtual stuff. I hadn't thought of. We thought we wanted to do it. I want to try and figure out ways to spice things up like that. But we've looked at the virtual learning, how to implement something like that, kind of doing a round robin with the different employees. So each meeting, they'll have a little section where they will teach something, a teaching moment.
I have a client that does that once a week. It's a virtual learning. So everybody joins, and it's usually one of the senior engineers. People kind of just throw things in a virtual bucket. I got stuff on this. I don't really know how to do this. And then that team will pick a topic to teach once a week. I was also going to say the prizes, sometimes that will get people to come to things. Don't always do something virtually. Yeah, you can give them a virtual gift card. People love getting stuff in the mail. I don't care what they say. People love seeing UPS come up and they have some box of stuff for them. We did a contest at a client that Alan and I worked with. It's in the Midwest, and they had a contest, and we ended up sending them a box of sweet treats from Savannah River Street Sweets here in Savannah. So we sent them a big box of candy and cookies and things like that. As the prize for the team that won the contest for us. So you can always do stuff virtually, but again, people love getting stuff in the mail. So, if there's anything that you can do like that, that's also a cool thing to add to it.
Yeah, I had one client in the West Coast who, this is really mid-pandemic. The service manager delivered a pizza to every single employee in person and had a 5-minute chat through the door.
Oh, wow. It went above and beyond. Holy smokes.
Above and beyond, a bit extreme, but so is being in the middle of a pandemic a bit extreme. So I don't know if you can do that all the time, and that was definitely the right place, the right time.
That's awesome.
Our policy here is for work anniversaries, we have a pizza party, and Veronica goes to the hell of scheduling 4 simultaneous pizzas to arrive, and trying to do one of those in Canada at that, which is quite challenging.
But we at Eureka Process, we are all virtual. We live all over the United States, and one of us is in Canada. So, yep, the guy in the yellow jacket.
That explains a lot.
Does it?
I'm an American, though. I just happen to be living in Canada.
Yeah, he's from here. He's from Savannah, a little town outside of here called Richmond Hill, but he's been splitting between Canada and Mexico for a couple of years now. So we're all the time trying to think of different ways to make sure that everybody's communicating. And again, I would much rather just do a quick Zoom call or a Teams call and hammer out a question, an issue, somebody's not understanding something, then send a ton of emails or a bunch of messages back and forth in Slack or Teams. Adam and Veronica, we do it a lot. Alan will too. I'm just like, dude, I have no idea what you're asking me. Can we just chat this out real quick, and let's just hop on a call and get it done. So I do think that you need to make sure that you're having make the time to make those video calls, even though it's an extra step to make the video call. I think it has a big impact.
Yeah, I've actually been shocked. This is a recent occurrence. How many of my clients I'm meeting with, and none of the employees have video cameras. And they're, some of these are multi-site locations, even if they're all in the office at different offices. I'm like, this is a big personal touch and a relatively inexpensive purchase. So that's a piece. And Brooke, maybe we should add to this conversation the always on portal idea and the pros and cons of that one.
Always on portal.
Where there was a video conference running 24/7 or maybe 8x5.
Yeah. So we have a client that all of the employees -2 are remote. And when I say remote, they're scattered across the world. This client, when I first went to go help them a couple of years ago, they start a virtual office meeting in the morning and it runs all day long. Everybody has a separate monitor. It runs constantly. So if I get up from my desk to go to the restroom or get a water, people can look and see that I'm not sitting in my chair. So clearly Brooke is not available to chat because she's not sitting there. When I first came to work there, I thought, man, this is super stinking weird. And then once I got the hang of it, I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Because you can clearly see when I'm not at my desk. And when I'm on a call or when somebody's working with a client, they just hit the mute button and then the rest of us can continue to chat. So if there was some news thing from the night before, football game, I mean, it's the same as us just kind of sitting in a common area together, having a conversation. I really, really like it. I wish more people did it. Again, it took some while for me to get used to it, but once I got the hang of it, I absolutely love that concept.
Yeah, so we don't use that internally for us, and it's strictly because, like for me, I'm on another video call 7 hours a day, and the rest are on a varying amount of calls as well. So it's been more difficult, even though we're still considering it. What about those? Some folks have been resistant to like, oh, they feel like we're spying on them. How do you respond to that? I understand the sentiment, but that's not what it's about or how it's used.
I agree, and I think it's got to come from the top. It's got to come from ownership, leadership, that's not what this is about. And that same concept applies to people that when they're thinking that we ask them to put in time entries that I'm micromanaging you. I'm not. I just need to know what you did. So if something happens, we can go fix it so that I can send the right bill, whatever. So to me, that same sort of mentality applies. And the reason I'm saying this because I was at a client last week and a lot of people thought that the reason I'm asking for time entries is because I want to micromanage their work and say, oh my gosh, you spent 10 minutes too long on this particular ticket. That's not why I'm asking for the time entry. I'm asking it because we need to document, we need to have change management, I need to be able to bill correctly, etc. The video thing, I think it has the same mentality. I'm not there to micromanage. I just want to be there. So if somebody needs something, you can just, hey, Brooke, I got a question. Do you have time for me? And I can say, yep, I got a call in 5 minutes and then I can help you. It's making sure that we're setting the tone that it's a collaborative environment and not a micromanaging environment. So you want to make sure if you're the manager, the operations manager, and you see me get up and go somewhere and come back, I don't get some message that says, Brooke, I saw you out of your desk from 11 to 11:02. Okay, I went to go get a drink of water. You need to be careful and walk that line with caution.
I think that's a lot of what the KPIs help with as well, right? You have expectations to meet that are well-defined, easy to measure. If those are met, it's okay if they're gone from 11 to 11:02.
Exactly.
I don't even have to give you a reason as far as I'm concerned.
Nope. And again, it's a trust relationship. The biggest part of making sure that everybody's on the same page with the trust is making sure that we have everything documented, make sure that we've got the policies in place, and make sure that it's been delivered and understood by all, and allow people to ask questions. Because I wrote the SOP, maybe it makes sense to me, but when I'm delivering it, maybe a couple people are like, this is kind of fuzzy. I don't really understand what you're saying here. No reason for me to get defensive about it. If those two people don't understand it, more than likely somebody else is not going to either. How can I make it more clear? How can I deliver it in a manner in this document or in person so that it's very clear what we're doing? The processes that we are using, the work from home policies, the KPIs that we have, all of those are available. Veronica is, when we get done with this particular webinar, she will send those out via email. So we're making all of those things available to everybody. So you have all of the information that we have.
I'd note on ESAT and visibility. I thought it was interesting that from a manager's perspective, you want to know where your employees are, what they're doing, what they're working on, how much time they're spending on things. So you wanted those metrics to help run your business. As from an employee's perspective, they want to know that they can reach their manager, that they can get questions answered, they know what's expected of them. They have a proper policies like this in place, so they understand what their expectations are for working at home and understand the ins and outs of their jobs that they are responsible for and being held accountable to. So it kind of works both ways, where everybody just wants a little bit of communication and understanding around this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. If they're responsible for a KPI, how can they affect change to that number? And it just seems interesting to me that in both directions, people are just looking for communication. It's pretty cool.
I frequently hear when I see some negative ESAT scores or negative employee satisfaction, I just want to know if I'm doing a good job.
Yep.
We tend to manage by exception. That's human nature, and it's efficient, frankly. It's not effective, but it's efficient. To just, oh, this is wrong, let's fix it. This is wrong, let's fix it. and we don't tell them you're doing a good job, and KPIs and metrics can help with that. Like, hey, you're hitting this number. This is a good job. Thank you.
What have you seen out there for ESAT tracking? I know CSAT is pretty mature, but
One software application that's a common amongst a couple of people that we consult with is a tool called Tiny Pulse. I think Alan and I have used that before as well at another MSP that we were at. It sends out, you can customize emails. It goes out to various employees. You can ask, whatever questions you want. There's an app available on the phone. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And one of the big questions is, how happy are you at work? We ask that one once a month. So there's an application for that. I have another client that has it's not a mailbox, but it's where you can submit virtual feedback, and it's anonymous. So they have an internal tool for that. The Tiny Pulse, one of the reasons I like it is because it's 100% anonymous. If Alan sends out a Tiny Pulse and asks everybody, hey, how was last month? And I reply back, last month stank. I hated it. I didn't like this, that, and the other. Unless I put my name on it, he has no way of knowing if it was me, if it was Adam, if it was Veronica. It's an anonymous way to be able to give feedback, both positive and negative. But I think a lot of it is you have to develop the culture of wanting the feedback, because if you don't have the culture, no matter what, in my opinion, no matter what tool you use, it's not going to work if we haven't developed the culture of, we want your feedback. We can't act on everything, but 100%, I want to hear stuff that you've got to say.
Yeah, I think Crewwho does that too. I'm sure there's other ESAT tools.
There's probably a ton out
Yeah,
there.
so
I'm familiar with.
as Brooke was alluding to, priority when it comes to an employee satisfaction measuring tool is anonymity and workload. How much extra work are you asking them for to do it? So what I like about Tiny Pulse is it tries to ask you a 1 through 10 question. It should take about 60 seconds or less once a week to give your feedback. Some of them are a little bit longer, and you get a less response rate in those. And to get anonymity, you typically have to have a certain number of people, usually at least 5. I would even recommend 10 or more before that becomes powerful. And if you ask for feedback, you have to address it, or you're actually going to erode culture further.
Absolutely.
Sometimes addressing it is like, look, I see your concerns. I can't fix this right now, and this is why. Okay, well, that's a beginning to address a concern versus just ignoring it and doing nothing about it. It's like, why do we even bother filling these out? Another big point is the best cultures, the best companies do not require such a tool. If you truly have two-way bidirectional feedback, no sense adding this tool to the mix. But if you're having trouble getting there, start with this. It's a great public forum to show people, I've asked, you spoke, I listened, and we acted. I think both those tools have ways of marking, like, oh, here's a suggestion somebody gave us. Here's what we did about it. So that you can actually see progress over time and get those wins
What was
out
the
there.
board that we started using? Was it the Kaizen board that we tried one time?
The which board?
The Kaizen board?
The Kanban board?
No, I thought it was the Kaizen board where you could have sticky notes, and you would put sticky notes on there, and people would, the leadership team would move them along, and you didn't have to sign them. You could just put a sticky note with an idea and slap it on this board.
That sounds similar to Kanban. The idea being there are lanes of progress, and you can take the sticky note, move it from left to right, showing progress is being made, ending incomplete,
So
starting
they have
new.
that. If you have in office, for the people that are watching today, if you're going back to an office, that's also an option. There's also virtual options for those type boards where people can anonymously put up a suggestion or a complaint or a, hey, it'd be cool if we had this kind of a thing. So they're virtually as well as available like a physical board if you're going to do something in office.
Right. Again, the key is anonymity.
One of the things that we did not, I'm not out of time, we did not talk about today is if you're going to ask people to fully come back into the office and things worked well remotely, I think we need to explain why. If you're asking your employees to come back to the office 100%, everybody worked remotely from home 100%, clients were served, nothing happened, everything went along swimmingly, and now you're asking people to come back into the office. I think you, as an owner, you need to give some sort of explanation as to why you're asking your employees to do that. Because if I worked remotely from home and everything went great and I was more productive than I was before, why do I have to come back? That would be my question to Alan. If Alan's my supervisor, why are you making me come back? I worked well. I was not an on-site person before, so why do I have to come back?
Yeah, so obviously if we had the KPIs in place, I would have empirical evidence that she's actually working better, so I wouldn't make that decision mostly. Some that I've heard is like, hey, we need to collaborate with the team, or we're not getting the mentoring of our junior techs the way we would like.
Whatever the reason
Yeah.
is, you want to communicate, just like we were talking about, Alan mentioned about the communication. If you're going to make a change to go back to the way you were before, or you're going to have a hybrid thing, make sure you're communicating the why as much as you can. When we put a metric in place anywhere that we consult with, I always explain the why. When I start measuring something, I explain the why, and I explain to all of the engineers and technicians, how am I getting this number? There's no reason for me to hide it. There's no reason for me to not tell you where the number comes from. I'm asking you to be accountable for it. So in the same respect, if somebody's asking you to change how you're working, it doesn't have to be all the nuts and bolts, but tell them why we're asking them to come back. I think another thing is to consider the hybrid environment. I think a lot of people that I've talked to that were not full remote before are moving to that model. Maybe I'm a tier 2, tier 3 engineer and I've got to do some project heavy lifting. So I'm going to maybe have to physically be in the office. So I schedule it maybe 2 days a week. I work from home, 3 days I'm in the office, so that you still offer people that kind of work-life balance. That's on the bingo card, because I think that was a lot of people when they started working from home realized that was a balance they had of being able to be at home and seeing your kids go off on the school bus or come back or do other things like that, and you're still meeting your KPIs and everything else. So how can we make it work for everybody, work for the leadership of the company, work for our clients, and work for the employees? So what kind of a solution can we, even if you got to patchwork something together, what works best for y'all? One size does not fit everybody.
I think the biggest question that I've seen that I honestly don't have a good answer for yet is, what do I do with my office space? IT companies are generally still growing like gangbusters, hiring. Many of them still have offices, and even if they're in a hybrid model, that they like to bring the team together from time to time at least.
Mhm.
Well, how do you plan your office space for when you normally have 20 people in the office at a time, but you have 40 staff and you want to bring them together from point to point?
That's a logistical question we got to hammer out.
Yeah.
We do have that going on with us, because deliveries are a big problem. We have people working from home, but I have an empty office, but yet deliveries need to be made. Do you ship that stuff to the employee's house, which I'm dead set against, or how do you get the product in their hands? And the other question that surprised me that I thought was really a slam dunk is just asking them what they prefer. It never occurred to me that I could have somebody working at home that doesn't prefer to work at home. They want to be back in the office.
I did hear that from a lot of people, a lot of employees and people that I'm actually interviewing for V-screening. They're asking, hey, is this full remote, or can I go to the office? Because some people know I don't work well remotely. I had several people that were like, I'm not productive at home. I prefer to be in an office and I work better that way. So I think that's a wonderful way to approach it, is just to talk to your employees and see if you can get some feedback and use that to make some decisions.
Doesn't play well with others.
Yeah. But there's also a few weird cases where people fight coming back to the office, and as soon as they get there, they're like, oh, wait, I missed this. This is great.
Yeah, a couple examples of this. My previous MSP that I worked for, they were on a hybrid model for as long as I was there. So like probably 7-8 years ago, they were already in this hybrid model. Their technicians were on a weekly or 2-week or bi-weekly rotation. So they'd be 2 weeks in the office, 2 weeks off. So we'd have different shifts of technicians coming in. And then anybody that was in an admin position would usually be in the office 2 to 3 times a week, and then working remote the rest of the time. We did have get-togethers at least once a month where we would bring everybody into the office. So we didn't need as much office space as a normal company would. If everybody was on site, you had to plan for that. We also shared an office with one of our clients, so there were some common spaces, and we had to be respectful of them in their space. So it was a compromise all around, but it did kind of work. The issue was when we started growing and we started acquiring more and more inventory in our office, then we did need a place to store that. And we had to accommodate this growth that we were going through. So, I was a service manager at the time, and I gladly gave up my office to put a couple technicians in there. I was like, you guys are billable resources, you guys can work in here. So I would just kind of like float around wherever there was an available desk, and we kind of made it set up that way. Everybody had laptops, there was docking stations, you just plop down. You have to be intentional about it. But it is possible if you're trying to kind of grow into this. We ended up sacrificing a couple offices for that inventory as we were acquiring larger and larger clients. Their equipment would come into our office, and we would need a place to put it and store it and keep it safe and get it configured before it got shipped out again.
That's my long-term investment tip for you. Is I think now is the time to buy commercial office space.
Okay. All right, we're close on time here, so I want to do some housekeeping things for Veronica. Our next ITDUG webinar is going to be August 25th. Ray Orsini is going to be there from OIT VoIP. I don't think we have a topic yet, but we would love to encourage everybody to sign up on Zoom. You'll be able to vote in the polls via the Zoom app. You'll get some updates from us early so you know what's going on. And Veronica is going to have some kind of cool prize for the next one. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, so I work with Ray and many other MSP vendors on a Slack channel. We communicate back and forth. And I heard that Ray was the king of process in his company that he's growing for the last 10 years. And so he and I are going to talk about exactly that. Like, how do you build processes into any business, and what does that gain you? I actually hear he just started a 4-day work week himself.
See, I'm thinking like Jeopardy. I'm gonna, Veronica's gonna have questions. Y'all are gonna buzz in, and that's how we're gonna determine who's king of process.
All right, I like it. Oh crap, competitive. Gotta go study.
I was gonna say that should get you moving. Also, if you have ideas, things that you would like for us to put on for an ITDUG webinar, by all means, send us an email, eureka@eurekaprocess.com. Just like we want to get feedback from our employees, we'd love to get feedback from all of the members that we have in that group. So if you have something you would like us to tackle or dive into or go get some more information on and deliver it to the group, please send us an email. We would love to hear about that. Veronica, anything else?
You did great. Thank you.
Any questions or any comments before we wrap up for the day?
Nope. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
All right. We will see you all next month. And everybody that attended virtually live on Facebook, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all in August.
Hasta la vista.